Hello, everyone. Uh, Connecting to the stream right now. Trying this out for the first time, so we'll see how it works. I'm using an app called Restream, so hopefully that's good. It works well. Um, yeah, we'll be learning little by little. But today, I want to talk about the first episode of the video series I'm about to publish on the YouTube channel, um, which is about the Trinity. And as the introduction will show, the Trinity is one of the Christian doctrine that is uh, debated the most. Even today, in 2025, you would think that this is a doctrine that is completely understood, that people have no issues with, that is well founded in scriptures. But just looking at some lives and streams on YouTube, on TikTok, looking at some videos, it looks like the Trinity is still a heavily debated topic. And even among Christians, still some Christians have struggled to understand what the Trinity is. I mean, how many videos there is on YouTube uh, about just trying to find a good analogy or an illustration to explain what the Trinity is and how is this concept even possible. So it's I thought it would be important to talk about it. I think it is interesting to explore. I mean, it is a core uh, Christian doctrine. I think in Christianity, if you reject the Trinity, you actually cannot be claimed to be a Christian, and you cannot be saved. So it is, according to the Christian doctrine, at least, it is pretty vital, very important doctrine. So yeah, I just wanted to uh, with this videos, and it will be a series because I do want to look at all the scriptures in the Bible that uh, Christians that supports and believe in the Trinity are using or are um, claiming actually demonstrates the Trinity in the Bible, and look at those scriptures and see what arguments are given in favor of the Trinity, but also look at the same scriptures and look at what argument could be given against it, and seeing which arguments actually has more weight and actually more makes more sense when it comes to this doctrine, and then let you decide. You decide whatever arguments makes more sense, and whether you're Christians or you're atheist or a Muslim or whatever faith you have, um, trying to be as objective as possible. Um, it's not a critic on Christian, and it's not a critic on the Bible, and it's not a um, sponsor to the Trinity either, or any type of Christian denomination whatsoever. So let's start. And one of the first scripture that I wanted to talk about is eventually John chapter 1, verse 1. I mean, if there's one verse that is said to be the very foundation of the Trinity, it has to be this one. It has to be John chapter 1, verse 1. Now, what does John chapter 1, verse 1 says? Where it says, if you look at online in your Bible, I'm using the English Standard Version here, but it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, um, if we look at the arguments that are for the Trinity, like that supports the doctrine of the Trinity in this Bible verse alone. What can we see? What are usually the arguments here? Well, it looks like we don't really need to do much to find an argument because it's pretty. I mean, it's like right there. It's like the text actually says it. I don't think you even need to look at other verses or the context or any other things. I think it's it's right there, and a lot of the Christians are going to be using the scripture to show that yeah, the word logos in Greek is in the context we understand that uh, it's Jesus Christ, and here it says that he was with God, but also he was God. So I think one of the strongest arguments that weighs in favor of the Trinity in this verse is that it actually literally says that Jesus, the Logos, was God. And someone could argue, well, how do we know the Logos is Jesus here? Well, in the following verse, it actually says that it came to flesh on earth, and I mean, John clearly identifies the Logos with Jesus. There's no doubt about that, and um, like Bible scholars all agree that the Logos is referring to Jesus Christ. I mean, there's no doubt that the Logos is Jesus Christ. Um, so we could say that this is a very strong argument, strong biblical support for the doctrine of the Trinity, without any doubt. Um, and to be honest, I can't really think of any other argument for the Trinity based on this verse, um, because really it's in that last clause of that sentence, and the Word was God. Um, I mean, there's nothing else in the verse that would indicate that would add more to the evidence of the textual analysis of it that it's Jesus, the Word is God. So I guess we can jump now on the other side and looking at what arguments actually could be given against the Trinity, even against John chapter 1, verse 1. And is it even possible to have arguments against it? Or actually, it is because obviously Bible scholars have looked into it. Um, and there's a couple arguments that are usually given to show that John here is not necessarily saying that Jesus is God, like God the Almighty. And you could say, well, I mean, it says here God. So how is it possible that John didn't mean that? Uh, well, we have to look at the Greek to understand that because this was written in Greek in the New Testament, and now it's translated in English. But in Greek, it actually has a little bit of a difference, and it's actually a very important difference. But before we go into the Greek, I wanted to myself um, raise two arguments that, to me, in reading this verse, kind of stands out to me when I first read this verse. That goes against the Trinity, I'll try to rank the argument from like the weakest to the strongest because I could understand I can understand that some arguments are stronger than others when it comes to support something in the Bible. And sometimes it's just based on personal assumption or personal understanding. Maybe there's a lack of Bible scholar consensus on it, and it's just kind of your own interpretation. And in other time, it's just like right there, and there's no way to interpret it in any other way. So I'll start with two arguments that are kind of my own interpretation, and so I just want to say that out of the box that this is my own interpretation, and I'm not saying that this is kind of backed up by any sort of uh, Bible scholar or anything like that. But I thought that's just for the challenge of, I mean, just for the exercise of challenging an argument in evidence, just for the art of challenging a claim. I thought it would be interesting to make up, or not make up, but at least to raise a couple arguments against the claim here, and see what you think about it, and you think it makes sense. So the first argument that I wanted to talk about here is, when you look at it here, it says that in the beginning was the word. So when I first read this for the first time, I kind of took time to stop and think about this, because it looks like in the beginning was the word is the first clause of the sentence, because you have a comma. And what do I see in this first clause? Well, I see in the beginning, I see the verb was, and then I see the subject, the word. Now, if I just combine all of that together, what can I understand? Well, I understand that there is apparently a beginning. Beginning is a moment in time. So what is the beginning referring to in the verse here? Well, the clause only include the word, Jesus. So my argument is that here John is saying that the word had a beginning, and that's why he started with this first clause. In the beginning was the word. Now I understand, and this is why this is my weakest argument from that standpoint, because I do understand that Bible scholars uh, all agree. From what I could read, I don't think I've found any um, scholar that was going in my direction. But all research and papers that I've seen uh, all agree that actually the word beginning here, in the beginning, uh, most likely refers to the in the beginning of Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, and therefore refers to the creation of the earth and heavens and all that. And so here it is, the scholars is not to say that the beginning here refers to the word, but that it refers to uh, before even the creation started, the word was. And so it's just here affirming the pre-existence of the word Jesus Christ to the creation of Genesis. Basically, that Jesus existed even before the earth and heaven was created, which is interesting because we know that in later on in John, we know that Jesus affirmed that he was existing before his birth on earth, when he said, before uh, Abraham, I am. So here it even give us even and extends its pre-existence even further by saying that even before earth and heavens were there, he existed already. So that's the scholarship, Bible scholarship consensus and approach on it. And so I just wanted to say that. But this is why I still think that my argument is weak, but I still think it stands, because I don't think here John wanted to necessarily refer to the creation. Um, the reason for that is because in the uh, in the one second, if we look at uh, the verse after that, I think it's verse uh, 3 or 4. Yeah, I think it starts with verse 3, but basically it says um, that the word um, was the way by which yeah, I think the all might believe through him. I think it's 14 maybe. I think there's one verse that actually clearly mention yeah, I think it was, and the word through him came into being, and the world him not knew. Well, this is the interlinear, so it's obviously English word for word, um, but basically the following verses of John actually mention the creation, and that uh, the creation came into being through the word. And so I don't think that John would start with in the beginning, meaning the creation, and then later on actually talk about the creation again. I think he mentions the creation for sure, but he mentions it in relation to the Word, in relation to Jesus Christ, and just to show that he was, not only he was pre-existing the creation, but he was also actively involved and uh, like essential into bringing everything into being. And so I don't think it would make sense for him to say in the beginning, meaning all creation, he was, and then again repeating the same idea later on to basically say the same thing. I think when it says in the beginning, it's really referring to the word. Like in the beginning was the word. In the beginning, Jesus Christ um, was with God. And another point too that tells me that my argument is, again, it's still a weak argument. I acknowledge that, but it still stands because I think in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, if John did have this expression in mind when he wrote this, like when he had if he had Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 in mind when he wrote this, it means that he probably used the same idea behind Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, scholars agree that the expression in Hebrew, I don't remember what's the pronunciation in Hebrew. I think it's Bereshemi or something like that. I'm not really sure. I'm not really good with the Hebrew. But if you do some research, it actually shows that this is kind of it's not indicating like the beginning as a start of time, but more as a process that is already in action. And so some scholars actually say that they could be rendered as um, when God created the earth and uh, heaven and earth. So it's like as the action was ongoing, then this happened. And so I do believe that if we apply the same idea to John chapter 1 verse 1, um, it's not if it cannot be about the creation here, because it is if we apply the same thing, that this is a process ongoing. uh, it has to refer to the word Jesus Christ, and so that's why I think that even if we assume that John had this in mind, I don't think that he would say that this is about the creation of the world and heaven and earth, but more that this is about Jesus Christ Himself. Um, so this is like an exercise of looking at a text, just doing some textual analysis and uh, looking at what actually the author wanted to say here. What did he mean? And yeah, making up an argument for yourself to go against the claim that this supports the Trinity. But like I said, if you do some research, even on this website here, um, you have on BibleHub.com, you have a lot of commentary that, like I said, will be about Bible scholarship consensus. That they all say that no, no, this is referring to the creation of heaven and earth, and it, John wanted to show here that he pre-existed that important event. So yeah, just for the sake of exercising an argument here. Now, my second uh, stronger argument than the first one is um, it has to do with the tense here, um, like the verb. Here it says well, maybe we'll go back because this is the Greek, so it's a little hard to read. But it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Now, let's think about this a little bit. If John, when he wrote this, meant to say that Jesus is God, like he is the God, right? That he is the Almighty, he's Yahweh, he is the one who parted the sea, he's the one who brought up the 10 plagues. I mean, he's the God, right? If that's what John wanted to say here, that the message that he wanted to that he wanted to give, um, why would he be using past tense here? Like, uh, if Jesus is God, and that's the message John wants to give, normally he would be saying, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God." But clearly, the all translations are rendering this as past tense, was God. And I think in the Greek that's what the idea is that it's in the past tense. So my second argument here, like again, it's not an argument that is supported or brought up by scholars, not to my knowledge. And if you know of any scholars that talks about this, please let me know. Um, but it's just reading the text, and I'm just trying to think, like, if the author's intent in this verse is really to make that powerful statement that is very new to basically any um, Jewish born, raised, or even like kind of Christians at the time, to say that okay, I'm here to clarify the identity of the Christ, and it's right there it is. Like, finally, I'm clarifying this for you. If that's the intent of John, then why use the past tense? Because clearly, when John wrote this, I think that was like the last book that was ever written, at least that is recorded to be the last of the Bible. It's the Gospel of John. So if John, when he wrote this, let's say it's like in 70 CE or whatever, um, most likely he knew that. I mean, he believed that Jesus was in heaven at that time. And if he meant to say that Jesus is the God, there's no reason why he would say that he was God. Uh, to me, it would make more sense to say that he is God. Like, as I'm writing this gospel right now, Jesus is God. And that will make it much more of a powerful statement in favor of the doctrine of the Trinity. But yet, he doesn't say that. He just says that he was God. So that's the second argument that I was thinking about, and again, just for the exercise of looking at a text and making an argument. But to me, that's a little bit of a stronger argument. And let me know what you think, if that makes sense, if that holds, or if you think there's something else that would uh, debunk that argument. Like, let me know, that I will be happy to hear it. But Yeah, that's kind of those two arguments that to me are, weakest strong. I recognize, but still worthy to consider. At least in reading the text. Now let's go to the third and last, probably the strongest argument that, in my opinion, absolutely debunk the Trinity claim in the verse. Again, it's not to say that the verse cannot be used for supporting a form of the Trinity, or like some sort of a divinity of Christ. And it's just that when Trinitarians are using this verse to say, "Hey, look, it says that Jesus was God," um, that's they actually are missing one point, or they're ignoring something about this translation. And maybe they do it willingly, maybe they don't know, but when you use an evidence to support your claim, um, you have to make sure that your evidence is robust, and that there's no loopholes in there, and that you can actually use it to make it to make your case stronger. And for that, you have to look at not only what it says in English, but you have to look at what it says in the original language, which is Greek. Now, what does it say in Greek? Well, if you look at the text, I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit, but um, and that's, and also just FYI, this is heavily supported by scholars. Like every scholars recognize this as being very important. Some are still going to say that, are still going to recognize that this is not a to take or to understand that this is less of a support of the Trinity or the divinity of Jesus Christ, but they still recognize that there is a textual and vernacular difference here that we cannot ignore. And the difference is that there's there's two mentions of the word God in this first verse, right? Uh, the first one is when it says that the um, yeah, actually, I have to go back to I was in verse 10. Right, there you go. The first one is when it says that the word was with God, and then the second is that he was God. Now, you have to look at in Greek the first mention of God, which in this case, according to the Trinity and according to the belief, the with God here is supposed to represent Yahweh, the Father. If I understand correctly, like the word here is the second person of the Trinity, which is Jesus Christ, and the word God here is the first person of the Trinity, which is the Father. If I understand correctly, and so in the second clause here, God is Yahweh, and the word is Jesus Christ. And then in the last clause, which is the second mention of the word God in this verse, uh, God here is supposed to refer to Jesus Christ. Now, we cannot deny that the word God exists in the verse for Jesus Christ, the word. It is there, but it's a different type of God. It's a different type of how the word God is rendered. You can see here, actually. Here it says that the word was with God, and in Greek it says ton theon. And then in the second mention, and God was the Word, it's Theos was and O Logos. So we see here, even in Greek, there is a difference of how the word is used. And when you look at the commentary, I think I can do it here. You'll see. Oh, here actually, yeah. That this is the coming back to my first week argument. I think this is the one that is um, the Hebrew word that I had mentioned, the bereshith or whatever how it is called. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. Um, so here was the word. I think there was God. Uh, there's a commentary. Oh yeah, if you ever want to look at some Bible scholar translation comments for any Bible verse, Bible Hub is a really good resource because it really has a lot of comments and um, and translations as well. So I think that I would definitely uh, look at that. Where is it again? Okay, so here it says. Um, So here we have this Dr. Doddridge that says, how regularly many have contended that the word God is used here in an inferior sense, the necessary consequence of which is, as indeed some have explicitly avowed, that this clause should be rendered the word was a God, that is, a kind of inferior deity, as governors are called gods. And then uh, and then after that, like I said, uh, he will explain that this is why we still can think of it as not just a deity or like a divine quality, but as essence that he is the God. And so here he explains basically what uh, Trinitarians are going to to claim. But to me, it's a very strong argument because if, like I said, if John here wanted to make the statement that Jesus is God, uh, why use another form of the word God? Yeah, that wouldn't make sense. He would have used the same one that he used the clause before when he said that the word was with God. But in the mention of where it would make a big statement for God's for Jesus' divinity, eh, he actually doesn't. He used something else. He used another form of the word God, which is more rendered as a quality rather than essence. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's a very strong argument against the Trinity. Now, again, like I just want to repeat again that it's not to say that um, it's not a good argument in favor of the Trinity, and that it cannot be used or it should just be rejected. Uh, it does add an element to Jesus Christ that was probably never really talked about before. That he has some divine power. Um, but we have to be careful when we present an argument not to ignore these type of elements in the text, which is our in this case is a translation element, and acknowledge it, and not use it as our go-to verse for the Trinity, because it's not as strong as we think. In so yeah, it's a good exercise to look at it, and when you look at an argument or an evidence for something, to always do your research. Don't take someone's words for granted, even if someone make it very intellectual or they look like they know the Bible very well. It's always good to look at the text, and then obviously look at the context too. Uh, we know that in the following verses in John chapter 1, there's also other details that adds up to what actually John wanted to say here, because we usually focus on verse 1, but when John wrote the gospel, he didn't break up the gospel in verses and chapters. That was just like a some sort of a scroll, that he was writing. It's later on that it was broken up in chapters and verses. So it's always important to not just stop at the verse and continue reading the rest of the story, and see what actually is the intent of the author. Like, what is it that he wants to say? So I think that's it. I hopefully that was helpful. That was interesting. I thought it was interesting when I read this the first time, and like I said, this is kind of the first episode or a video that I'm going to make for the Trinity and the its biblical foundation, looking at arguments that are given for the Trinity and also arguments that are given against the Trinity. And because it's the first video, the first live I'm making for this, um, I think I'm planning to maybe do one live or one video, one verse at a time, because it's some work. You have to do research. I have to do some of the visual. I still have to get used to the you know the software and everything. But just because it's the first video, I do want to talk about one more verse, just as a bonus. And I think this is also another important verse that um, Trinitarians are going to use and to support the Trinity, and clearly shows that Jesus is more than just, you know, a prophet or like the Son of God. And also, this verse is very important because it is located in the Old Testament, not the New Testament. Because a lot of people are gonna say that the idea of the Trinity, the concept of the Trinity, was added later on by both the disciples, the apostles, and maybe by, you know, later on addition by the church fathers and Constantine and you know all these beliefs that he had in the time. But they like to go to this verse because it's actually in the Old Testament, and it is in the Hebrew scriptures. And so they say, hey, look, even from the Hebrew standpoint, we have evidence that Jesus is supposed to be God. And so the verse, maybe it's good that I talk about the verse. So what is the verse? The verse is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. So what does it say? Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, it says, for us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. So that's Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. And I'm reading from the NIV, so New International Version, but I think most translations are pretty similar. I don't think there's much of a difference. And yeah, this is in Isaiah, so this is in the Old Testament, and Trinitarians are going to use this as a very strong evidence of Jesus, because chapter 9 of Isaiah is about the Messiah, basically. And so here it doesn't say Jesus, it doesn't say the name Jesus Christ, but this is clearly a prophecy about the Messiah. And and here Isaiah uh, use like a vocabulary that is very strongly in favor of calling the Messiah God. Like, he's not just saying that the Messiah is going to be a son, a child is going to be born, and that he will have some sort of an authority, because here it says that the government will be on his shoulders, so we can understand that he has some sort of an authority. But he actually says that he will be called Mighty God. So I mean, it's a pretty strong, again, powerful evidence in favor of the Trinity, because even from the messianic standpoint and the prophecy, we have something that announced already that this Messiah will be so unique that he will be called Mighty God. Um, So yeah, I think this is again another instance of a verse that, reading from it, stands alone as a powerful argument for the Trinity. Now, if we again look at the other side, Like, what arguments can we make against or to debunk this claim for the Trinity? Um, well, there's a couple. I think I can think of two at the moment. There's probably another one that I was thinking about, but um, I don't think it has any hold, and maybe I'll talk about it when I do a little bit more research. But for sure, there's at least two that are very important. One is again has to do with translation, and what the Hebrew word for these terms actually mean to the person writing it. So what do I mean by that? So I can go back to the Bible Hub. So this time we're gonna go to um, so Isaiah. Where is Isaiah? Okay, verse 39, verse 6. Cool. So I think I can also get the Hebrew somewhere. Um, his name should be called Wonderful. Okay. Um, so what we're looking for here is the Hebrew word for the word mighty God, because again, this is the claim. Like the claim here is that He is the mighty God. The divinity claim here is also in the expression. But what does mighty God is? How does mighty God is rendered in Hebrew? And uh, and this is again something that if you followed some debates about the Trinity, this is probably something that also comes up a lot. So it shouldn't be a surprise to you if that's something you like to follow. But where is it? I don't. Oh, I think maybe it's here. No, I don't remember where to go for the Hebrew translation. Uh, let's see. I think it was here. No, yes, I know. Yes, yes, is it this one? No. Hmm. Oh, yeah, it is. It was hidden. Okay. So Isaiah, was it again 9:6? Okay, I don't know. I don't like the design of this site though. Like it's not really well designed. It's another topic though. All right. So Hebrew. So here we have the interlinear of Hebrew, and if you look at here, mighty. Um, there it is. So here, the expression in Hebrew for mighty God, as you can see here, is El Gibor. All right. So this is El Gibor, and Gibor is mighty, and El is in reference to God. Uh, Now, do we have did Isaiah mean to say that the Messiah will be the God like Yahweh in the same sense that in other instances where Yahweh is called mighty, uh, he's also referring to the same. He's using the same vocabulary here. Well, luckily, we have in the following chapter, I think, if I remember correctly, in chapter 10, we have also a rendering like this of mighty God, but I think this time it is supposed to be about Yahweh itself. And so let's see how is this rendered as well. Uh, I wish I could see the entire chapter. Uh, Let me see on phone. Remember the verse. And not to keep the suspense waiting too much, because I do have to head off soon. But basically, the point is that some people make is that um, Yahweh, when he's called like mighty or um, almighty, is always a different Hebrew word. It's like, I think it's called El Shaddai. I think El Shaddai is Almighty. So each time that there is a reference to Yahweh as being Almighty, it's always El Shaddai. But each time there's a reference to Yahweh, uh, like referred to as is that he is mighty, it's El Gibor. But Jesus or the Messiah is never called El Shaddai, the Almighty. And so I guess the argument that some people make is like, yeah, he's called mighty God, but it's an inferior version of mightiness, because El Shaddai, which is almighty, which is the concept of omnipotence, is never applied to the Messiah. Um, and so just to show this, I'm just gonna show where I think it's like chapter 10. We have to look at it from the verse. Yeah, I think it's okay. Just making sure that's about Yahweh. Yeah, I think it is about Yahweh. Okay, so it's chapter 10, verse 21. So let's go to 21. And okay, there it is. So here, this verse, if you read the context, I mean, it's a little hard to navigate with this website, but you can open your Bible or as I'm talking and look at the context. But in verse 23, it mentions Yahweh. So this is about Yahweh. This is not about the child is born or like the Messiah. This is about Yahweh. And here it says God the Mighty. So Isaiah write again the same expression that he wrote in chapter 9, and then here he says God the Mighty, and so it says El Gibor. And so it's the same Hebrew word that was used in chapter 9. And so Trinitarians are going to say, look, you see, like Isaiah for both Yahweh and the child is born, or the Messiah, he uses the same Hebrew expression, which is uh, mighty, or Gibor. And if you click here, you'll see that each time it's rendered, um, the word mighty is used uh, for basically different people. I think in Genesis here, this is rendered. This is applied to Nimrod, if my memory is correct. Yeah, a mighty hunter. So that's this is applied to Nimrod. Um, yeah, Nimrod. There it is. Um, it also can be referred as the warrior, mighty man, Gilead. So we can see that the word mighty, El Gibor, is used for many different people in the Bible. Um, and so the Messiah being called mighty God, um, again, yeah, it is a good argument for the Trinitarian, or at least the divinity part of the Messiah and Jesus Christ. But we can see that again, there's still a little difference. Like if Isaiah, just like John, meant to say that the Messiah will be the Almighty, like the same one that we have been calling all this time the unique, only true God, the Almighty Yahweh. Um, it would be odd not to use El Shaddai there and instead use El Gibor, which is also used for many other people in Hebrew that are clearly not God. So that's an argument that is given against that, and just to show you the reference of Almighty, I'm gonna try to find one verse with Almighty. I think there's one actually too in Isaiah, not far from the chapter 9. Um, uh, Jehovah of armies, uh, Yahweh, Ephraim. No, it's not that. Spoke to me. I remember there was one where it said the mighty. No, that's not us. Uh, God is with us. I'm gonna just look at it, and I'm just kind of browsing the chat. I think I remember in Isaiah there's a verse not far that says Almighty, but I may have to kind of search it. I have a bad memory sometimes, so okay, yeah, I will just search it. I thought it was close by. Okay, so Almighty, I think is AL, right? Not just yeah, AL. Okay, cool. Okay, let's try to find one in Isaiah. I mean, this word is almost everywhere in the Hebrew scriptures, but I think just for the fairness of the argument, I think it's good to just stick to Isaiah because it's from the same author. So yeah, there's one in Isaiah chapter 13, verse 6. So let's go to chapter 13, verse 6, and then we can go here. And then here we have the verse that says, again, this is word for word. So in English, it's not gonna make more sense, but you can look at it um, in your Bible and then read it in English. But what we are interested here is the word Almighty. So okay, so here it says Mitzadai. Oh yeah, so I think this is from the Almighty. So let's see. Yeah. So actually, this is probably not the same one. That maybe this is a different, how to say, Hebrew version of El Shaddai, because this is not El Shaddai but Mi Shaddai. So maybe it's kind of like a different way of rendering Almighty. But as you can see here, even then, um, yeah, there it is. So Job, in Job, there's it's only only applied to Yahweh. It's not applied to some sort of like person or character, human being or an angel or a king or whatever. No, this is only applied to Yahweh. When you look at those verses, it's only applied to Yahweh. It's never applied to someone else. And just to make that stronger, because I do think the word El Shaddai is something. It's probably like a version of it that is conjugated or something like I don't really know too much of Hebrew, but I do know that the word Almighty El Shaddai is used a lot more than this version. So let's see if I can find another one. Uh, let's find in Ezekiel chapter 1 verse uh no, chapter 10 verse 5. So let's see Ezekiel, just to show you the Hebrew rendering of El Shaddai. It's interesting actually. Chapter 10 verse what? Verse 5. So oh, okay, okay. um all right, so here it is. So El Shaddai. So if I go here, so yeah, I think the other one, Miss Shaddai, was probably like, I don't know, maybe like an extended version or something. But here you can see there's a lot more references to Almighty there, and and it's always applied to Yahweh, like the Father. It's not applied to either the Messiah, Jesus, to any other characters in the Bible, or angel, or king, or anyone else. It's always applied to Yahweh. So this is like the first argument, again, looking at translation and looking at um, how it differs to how a word is employed, referring to the Messiah, to Jesus Christ, as being like God. But how is the same word used in other instances for actually the Father, or Yahweh, or God? And um, again, it is a good argument for the Trinity, but if you actually look and do some research, you see that there is a little bit of a difference. To me, I look at it as if like you are in court, right? You're a lawyer and you are defending a case. You're trying to, you know, defend your client who is accused of a crime. And when you're gonna look at evidence to make sure that he has an alibi, for example, or maybe there's a witness, or maybe there's like a forensic evidence. So whatever you're trying to present to the court and the jury, you're gonna make sure that the evidence is as strong as possible. That there's no loopholes in there. That there's nothing that the prosecution can, bring up and find and highlight the weakness in your evidence, especially if that's all the some of the only evidence that you're presenting. You want to make sure that you present is as strong as possible. And when I see Trinitarians bringing up these verses in support of the Trinity, um, are there worthy arguments to present? Of course, it is, but is it strong? I don't know, because I could see a prosecution in this case saying, "Yeah, but look, in the rendering of Hebrew is actually not the same of how it is rendered for the Father and Yahweh in other places." Um, so yeah, that's just one argument against it, that I was thinking about. But I did say that there was two. There's two arguments against it as well, and there's another one that again has to do with the um, like how the verb is conjugated, like the tense of the word. And actually, there's another one too that I just remember that was brought up not a long time ago. But so let's go back to Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6, and maybe we can even stay in the Hebrew line. So um, there it is. So you can see here that the the tense of the verb, like how it's conjugated. Um, we can see that um, it says here that the child who's born to us, the Son, so the Messiah, says that he will be called uh, all these things: Counselor, Prince of Peace, and then Mighty God. So again, just like in the case of John chapter 1 verse 1, if Isaiah had the intention to say that the Messiah would be uh, the God, like the Almighty, the one that Jews recognize as Yahweh or the Father, or whatever, um, why would it say that he will be called Mighty God? Like, if to me, it will make more sense to say that he is God, like he is he is the mighty God. And just like with the other arguments, if his intent was to say that he is the God, then he would say that he is the Almighty God. But the fact that it's not Almighty God, it's not El Shaddai as El Gibor, and the fact that he's using a tense, like he's conjugating the word of something that's not happening yet, or hasn't happened yet, or is not true in the present moment where he wrote this prophecy, but will happen in the future, means that when he wrote this, prophecy, Jesus was not God, and he could not be called the mighty God. Which leads to the other arguments too that is strongly related to this one, and that's why I can't really make it a third argument because it's so related that I think it just stands as a very strong second argument. Is that it says that he will be called mighty God. It doesn't say that he will be mighty God. Like being called something and being something is different, because if you're called, you know, to be something, it just means that you're like given a title, uh, but that doesn't mean that you are it. Like you're not becoming God, or so. The fact that it's using call, uh, it's not a good argument to use for the Trinity. And for that, you don't even need to go into translation. You can just read in English, and it's pretty clear. There's a conjugated verb tense that is in the future, and there's a mention of a title because it's a calling. It's a call. It's not it's not a matter of. It's not a reference to his essence, basically. So yeah, again, two arguments here that is that could be made against the claim of the Trinity, or at least the divinity of the Messiah here, that can be used as an exercise to um, basically make an argument against another one, and I, I'm going to make more videos like this for other verses, because there's actually a lot of Bible verses that are used left and right for the Trinity, and you can see in most debates that we have online, the same verses usually come back a lot. You have John chapter 8, John chapter 10. You have like Revelation, I think. So you have a lot of verses that we will explore and look at it, providing the arguments, and presenting it to you, and looking at how the arguments is presented from the Trinitarian side, why they're even choosing this argument and why it makes sense to them, and presenting also other arguments that are used to debunk these other ones, um, and if it makes sense, if it actually is a strong argument, and you can decide which arguments is stronger for or against the Trinity. And I'm not gonna go into secular or external sources. I know there's other sources that can be used as well, like the church fathers, what they've said, Tertullian, Origin, all that. Like, I understand all that, and uh, like I'm not gonna look into also what scholars says about the time of the two powers in heaven. I'm not gonna. That's. I don't think that's going to be the point of this series. I might do another video about Constantine, because I think the story of Constantine is actually very interesting. In how it happened, the context of it, I think it's very interesting. So I do want to explore that a little bit, but that won't be the goal of these videos. I think I just want to stick to the biblical text and how it's used for or against the Trinity. So if you enjoyed this video and how the process was, please subscribe, like the video. You can follow me, and also if you have, from those two verses that we took, if you do have some arguments that are either supporting the Trinity or that are going against the Trinity that I didn't think about or that I didn't know, that I didn't mention, please send me a message or you can reply in comments. I'll be happy to look at it. So, all right. So I think I will start the